Bernard Arnault's story begins in a quiet French town, where the foundations of his personality, precision, discipline, and ambition were laid long before he became the world's richest man. Born in 1949, his upbringing was neither overly luxurious nor poor. It was rooted in stability, values, and a culture of excellence. His father ran a construction company, while his mother, a lover of classical music and fine arts, exposed Bernard to the elegance of European culture. As a child, Bernard was quiet, observant, and incredibly sharp. He was fascinated by architecture, numbers, art, and the idea of transforming ordinary spaces into extraordinary experiences. Teachers described him as a student who never settled for the average, always pushing boundaries, always asking deeper questions. His environment taught him discipline, but his natural instincts pushed him toward big dreams. He grew up witnessing the power of business decisions at his father's company, absorbing management lessons without even realizing it. At the same time, French culture shaped his love for elegance, beauty, and refinement. Even as a teenager, Bernard did not daydream about toys. He dreamt about empires. He believed that true success was not just about money. It was about impact, identity, and leaving behind something meaningful. This early foundation of discipline, art, business exposure, and ambition became the seed from which the world's greatest luxury empire would one day grow. École Polytechnique is not just a school. It is a breeding ground for France's most elite minds. Bernard Arnault's years there shaped him into a strategist rather than just an engineer. Here he learned systems thinking, optimization, and long-term planning. Surrounded by brilliant students, he had to push harder, think faster, and perform smarter. This environment sharpened his analytical abilities and leadership skills. Arnault understood that engineering was not his destination. It was his foundation. He absorbed the mathematical, logical, and structural thinking that later helped him build a luxury empire brick by brick. He developed a fascination with the way global industries worked, how brands grow, collapse, revive, and dominate. He learned the value of precision and the importance of structure. By the time he graduated, Bernard was not just a student with a degree. He was a thinker with a blueprint for greatness. He didn't want a normal job. He didn't want a safe life. He wanted to build something that would outlive him. And that hunger was about to lead him back to his father's company, where his transformation from a young graduate to a visionary business architect began. After completing his elite education at École Polytechnique, Bernard Arnault stepped into his father's construction company. But even in these early days, it was extremely clear that he was never meant to remain a traditional businessman following predictable paths. His mind operated on a different wavelength. He constantly questioned, calculated, analyzed, and visualized possibilities far beyond the present. In the late 1970s, while most young executives were satisfied with stability, Bernard felt an uncomfortable restlessness. He observed that the French construction industry was steady but uninspiring, profitable but limited, safe but not transformative. And Arnault was not the type of man who would spend a lifetime in an industry that did not allow him to shape culture, identity, and global influence. He wanted to build something bigger than buildings. He wanted to build value that people would aspire to own. He wanted to build meaning. This inner dissatisfaction led him toward his first major strategic decision, traveling to the United States to understand global markets, real estate psychology, and consumer behavior at a deeper level. Arnault's journey to America became one of the most transformative chapters of his early career. When Arnault arrived in New York, he felt as if he had stepped into a different universe. The towering skyscrapers, the massive advertisements on Times Square, the luxury boutiques on Fifth Avenue. Everything told him the same story. People don't just buy products, they buy symbols. They buy dreams, belonging, lifestyle, and emotional connection. He spent hours walking inside high-end stores, observing customer behavior, studying how branding shaped perception, and learning how companies converted ordinary objects into status symbols worth thousands of dollars. This revelation struck him deeply. Europe had heritage, culture, craftsmanship, But America had discovered the art of storytelling, marketing, and emotional seduction. Bernard began taking notes on how global luxury consumers thought. He noticed how wealthy Americans valued exclusivity, rarity, and identity more than the product itself. A dress was not just a dress, it was a statement. A handbag was not just leather, it was status. A branded watch was not about time, it was about recognition. These insights changed the direction of his entire life. During his months in the U.S., Bernard also studied the booming real estate market, especially in Florida. He saw how developers sold lifestyle instead of simply selling apartments. They sold communities, emotions, individuality, and stories. This again reinforced his belief that the future of wealth creation lay in industries that touched culture and identity, not just necessity. When he returned to France, he was a completely different man. His thinking had evolved from a domestic entrepreneur to a global visionary. He began applying American-style branding ideas and business strategies to his father's company. Instead of constructing ordinary buildings, he launched luxury development projects, high-end apartments, premium residential spaces, aesthetically unique buildings. These projects were profitable, but more importantly, they allowed Arnaud to experiment with luxury psychology on a small scale. He learned what wealthy clients expect, how exclusivity affects pricing, and how brand image can multiply value instantly. These experiments strengthened his belief that his real destiny lay in an industry where culture meets commerce, the luxury world. But Bernard did not rush. He observed quietly, studied deeply, and waited strategically. He built wealth through real estate expansion, made significant profits, and slowly began forming a mental map of how a luxury empire could be built. He realized that true luxury was rare, emotional, artistic, and experiential. It was not something you manufactured. It was something you curated. Luxury was like art, timeless, influential, and culturally powerful. And he wanted to become the curator, the architect, the king of this world. By the early 1980s, Bernard had already taken full control of his father's company and transformed it into a more profitable, modernized business. But he knew this was only a stepping stone. He wanted something iconic, something with history, something with emotional value. He wanted an entry point into an industry that represented elegance, culture, heritage, and prestige. He wanted a brand that could serve as the foundation of an empire. And that moment came when he discovered the bankrupt textile company Boussac Saint Frères. Hidden inside, which was a sleeping giant, Christian Dior. It was this moment, driven by insights from America, sharpened by experience in real estate, and fueled by his refined understanding of luxury psychology, that pushed Arnaud into the world of high fashion and elevated him onto the path of becoming the luxury emperor of the modern era. The year was 1984, a year that would not only transform Bernard Arnault's life, but eventually reshape the entire global luxury industry. At this moment, Arnaud was already a successful businessman with real estate wealth and a sharpened global perspective, but he was still searching for the right door, the one opportunity that would connect him with destiny. That door appeared unexpectedly when a failing French textile conglomerate, Boussac Saint Frères, came up for sale. To the world, it was a burden, a dying giant drowning in debt, mismanagement, and outdated operations. But Arnaud was not looking at papers. He was looking at possibilities. He saw past the broken buildings, the outdated textile mills, and the bankruptcy filings. Instead, he focused on one tiny detail that everyone else ignored. Inside this collapsing company was a jewel, a legendary but struggling brand called Christian Dior. Dior, once the crown of French haute couture, had lost its shine due to decades of poor management. But in Arnault's eyes, Dior was not weak, it was sleeping. It had history, class, beauty, prestige, and global recognition. It had the legacy of Christian Dior himself, a name synonymous with elegance and artistry. Arnaud instantly realized that if he could revive Dior, he could revive an entire industry. For him, this wasn't a business deal, it was an artistic awakening. Dior represented everything Arnaud admired: heritage, craftsmanship, culture, sophistication, and emotional value. It was the perfect seed to build a luxury empire. But the path to acquiring Busok was far from easy. This was not an open field. This was a battlefield. Dozens of investors were circling around the opportunity, government officials were involved, and banks were hesitant to fund such a massive restructuring project. The company was bleeding money. Thousands of employees were at risk of losing their jobs, and the press had already declared it a hopeless case. But Arnaud was built differently. He believed in calculated risk. He believed in strategic courage. And most importantly, he was a master of long-term vision. He understood a truth that only the greatest entrepreneurs recognize. The best opportunities are hidden inside the biggest problems. Arnaud began assembling a financial plan. He convinced investors, negotiated with banks, and carefully studied every asset and liability inside the conglomerate. Unlike others who saw loss, he saw leverage. Unlike others who wanted to break the company apart, he wanted to rebuild it entirely. His strategy was simple but ruthless. He would cut everything that was dragging the company down and protect the only thing that mattered, Dior. Once he secured control over the company, Arnaud made one of the boldest moves in French business history. He shut down unprofitable divisions, closed factories, and streamlined thousands of operations. These decisions were difficult and heavily criticized. The media labeled him cold, ruthless, heartless, a young businessman destroying an old French institution. But Arnaud knew something the media didn't. If he didn't cut the failing parts, the entire company, including Dior, would die. His mission was not destruction, it was resurrection. He wasn't removing life, he was removing poison. And slowly, the results began to show. Bernard reorganized the core team at Dior, hired modern designers, improved craftsmanship, refined the perfume line, and rejuvenated the brand's image. He invested in marketing, storytelling, and emotional branding, elements he learned from America. He pushed Dior back into the world of high fashion with dignity, glamour, and timeless elegance. Customers began returning. Revenue began rising. Dior started appearing in magazines, runways, advertisements, and global discussions once again. The revival was miraculous. What the world had dismissed as a dead brand was reborn stronger than ever. This resurrection of Dior became Arnaud's defining masterpiece. The moment he went from a smart businessman to a legendary strategist. It established him as a genius capable of seeing value where others saw garbage, capable of reviving culture, capable of resurrecting dreams. Dior didn't just bring financial success to Arnaud. It gave him control, credibility, recognition, and influence in the luxury industry. It gave him his first seat at the table of fashion power. But more importantly, it gave him a vision for the future. Now Bernard understood exactly what he wanted to create. A luxury empire made of heritage, beauty, art, and perfection. Dior was not the final step. It was the beginning. Through this deal, Arnaud discovered the map that would guide him toward building the greatest luxury conglomerate the world would ever see. He had entered the world of luxury not as a visitor, but as a king in the making. Dior was the crown he rescued. And soon, Bernard Arnault would build an entire throne around it. By the time Bernard Arnault secured control of Dior through the acquisition of Busok, he was no longer just a businessman. He had become a visionary with a mission. Part 5 marks the moment when his strategy, ambition, and understanding of human psychology finally merged into a single unstoppable force. What makes this chapter extraordinary is not just that Bernard revived Dior. It's that he used Dior as a blueprint, a testing ground, and a foundation for a far greater dream. The creation of the world's largest luxury empire. When he took charge, Dior was fragile. It had a legendary name, but a wounded identity. It had rich heritage, but a weak direction. It was famous, but financially shaking. Bernard knew that reviving a brand was not only about fixing numbers. It was about reconstructing its soul. He didn't want Dior to survive. He wanted it to reign. So he began rebuilding it with almost surgical precision, piece by piece, decision by decision. The first strategy he implemented was restoring Dior's emotional connection with the world. He understood something that many CEOs still fail to see. Luxury lives in emotion, not logic. If a brand loses its emotional aura, it dies. So Bernard invested heavily in storytelling. Romantic campaigns, glamorous visuals, high-end ambassadors, cinematic fashion shows, and exclusive brand experiences. He wanted every customer, whether rich or aspiring, to feel something powerful when they heard the word Dior. He wanted Dior to be more than fabric and perfume. He wanted it to be a fantasy. And slowly, it started working. Fashion magazines started highlighting Dior again. International buyers started paying attention. Celebrities began wearing it on red carpets. Once again, Dior became a symbol of elegance, artistry, and French excellence. But Bernard didn't stop with image. He went deep into the product pipelines. He restructured design teams to bring modern creativity while preserving classic heritage. He invested in better artisans, higher quality materials, and stricter standards of craftsmanship. He fought mediocrity ruthlessly, refusing to allow even a single weak collection to reach the public. For him, luxury had to be flawless. Every stitch mattered. Every bottle of perfume mattered. Every advertisement mattered. Dior became a brand where nothing average was allowed to exist. Then came his second strategy, one that would later become the backbone of LVMH. Use Dior as a cash engine to fuel further expansion. Most people thought he saved Dior just because of love for fashion. But Bernard was thinking much bigger. He knew Dior had the heritage and emotional power to generate massive revenue, and he planned to use that revenue to buy and revive other luxury houses. Dior was his base camp, his fortress, his first stronghold. With this in mind, Bernard strengthened the perfume division, which became one of the most profitable segments under his leadership. He expanded Dior's presence into more countries, giving it a global footprint and planting seeds for international domination. He modernized store designs, upgraded customer experience, and ensured that Dior boutiques became immersive worlds where customers felt transported into elegance the moment they walked in. During this time, Bernard's leadership style also evolved. He became more assertive, more strategic, and less forgiving of errors. He demanded discipline, excellence, and creativity from his teams. He pushed designers to think artistically yet commercially. He pushed managers to think globally yet execute locally. He pushed himself to be involved in every important decision, from runway shows to packaging designs to marketing messages. His attention to detail was obsessive, but it was this obsession that turned Dior from a fading icon into a resurrected powerhouse. But the most significant transformation happening inside Bernard was not visible to the public. He was beginning to dream of something much bigger. An empire where multiple legendary houses would exist under one umbrella, each powerful, each profitable, each timeless. Dior was the spark that ignited this dream. Its resurrection proved that he could revive dying brands. It proved that heritage could be saved with the right vision. It proved that luxury was not a fading tradition. Luxury could be modernized, scaled, globalized, and monetized. This realization became the turning point of Bernard Arnault's life. Dior was no longer just a brand he purchased. It became the foundation stone of what was coming next. The birth of LVMH, the world's first and greatest luxury conglomerate. With Dior thriving under his leadership, Bernard felt invincible. Not because of pride, but because he finally had the formula. He had the strategy. He had the confidence. He had the masterpiece that justified every risk he would take next. Dior taught him that luxury, when understood correctly, can become one of the most powerful economic forces on earth. This part of Bernard Arnault's journey is not just about saving a fashion house. It's about a man discovering his destiny. A man realizing the size of his own ambition. A man quietly preparing to reshape the future of global luxury. Dior was only the beginning. LVMH was waiting on the horizon. When Dior was finally stable, profitable, and shining again, Bernard Arnault knew that his journey up the luxury mountain had only just begun. Dior was his first masterpiece, but not his final vision. What Bernard wanted now was far bigger, far more ambitious, and far more revolutionary. He wanted to build the world's greatest luxury empire, one that would unite legendary houses, dominate global markets, and redefine what luxury meant for the next 100 years. This dream took shape in the mid-1980s when Bernard discovered a complex situation brewing between two prestigious but struggling houses. Moët Hennessy, the world's most famous champagne and cognac maker, and Louis Vuitton, the iconic French leather brand. These two giants were planning a merger to survive internal conflicts, financial pressure, and aggressive competition. But instead of joining forces smoothly, their merger turned into a battlefield of egos, pride, mismanagement, and boardroom chaos. Most investors saw this as a dangerous situation. Too risky, too political, too unstable. But Bernard Arnault saw something nobody else did. An opportunity to create the first luxury superpower in human history. This was the moment when Bernard's strategic genius truly awakened. Unlike the Dior deal, which was bold but straightforward, the LVMH situation was a complex chessboard with powerful players, hidden alliances, board disagreements, and unpredictable financial storms. But Bernard knew how to navigate chaos. He understood human psychology, corporate politics, and financial engineering better than anyone of his generation. And most importantly, he knew how to take control without appearing as a threat. So he moved silently, not with loud announcements, but with whispers, analysis, and calculated precision. Bernard began studying the weaknesses inside both companies. He saw that Moët Hennessy had extraordinary global influence through champagne and cognac, but poor leadership stability. Louis Vuitton had unparalleled brand power, but internal conflicts and brand dilution issues. Together, these two brands had massive potential, if a strong, disciplined leader controlled them. Bernard realized that if he could somehow enter the merger, secure voting power, and gradually strengthen his position, he could take over the entire group from the inside. This wasn't just business. This was war. And in this war, Bernard played the quietest yet most effective role. First, he started acquiring shares, secretly, carefully, quietly, using financial structures that disguised his growing influence. Then he built alliances with key shareholders who were frustrated with the internal chaos. He promised stability. He promised leadership. He promised profitability. Behind closed doors, he convinced banks to support him, argued that he could restore order, and build a hidden support network that would eventually become the backbone of his takeover. And all this happened while the media had absolutely no idea what he was planning. Then came the moment of revelation. Almost overnight, the world discovered that Bernard Arnault had become one of the biggest shareholders of LVMH. It was shocking. It was bold. It was historic. And it was only the beginning. Because Bernard didn't want influence. He wanted complete control. So he continued his takeover quietly, strategically increasing his stake, earning the trust of employees, winning the confidence of shareholders, and slowly positioning himself as the only leader capable of guiding LVMH out of its internal storm. But this takeover was not peaceful. It became one of the most intense corporate battles in French history. Bernard faced lawsuits, boardroom confrontations, political pressure, and fierce resistance from competing executives who saw him as a threat to their power. The media labeled him the wolf in Kashmir, the Ice King, the strategist who moves in silence. But Bernard did not blink. He remained calm, focused, unshaken. Every attempt to push him out only made him more determined. Every attack only made him smarter. Every challenge only sharpened his strategy. Slowly and methodically, he outmaneuvered every rival. By the late 1980s, his position was unshakable. Bernard Arnault had finally secured what he had been building toward for years. Full control over LVMH, the world's first luxury empire. The moment he took the top seat, everything changed. He reorganized leadership. He set new standards of excellence. He brought discipline, innovation, creativity, and ambition into the heart of the company. He strengthened Moët and Hennessy. He revitalized Louis Vuitton. He merged their strengths into a single unstoppable global force. And then he did what nobody had ever imagined. He began acquiring other luxury houses: Fendi, Sephora, Givenchy, Celine, Tag Heuer, Bulgari, Tiffany & Company, and many more, turning LVMH into the supreme, unmatched, dominant luxury juggernaut of the modern world. Part 6 is the moment Bernard Arnault transformed from a bold entrepreneur into a global emperor. This was the birth of LVMH. This was the rise of a luxury kingdom. This was the beginning of Bernard Arnault's unstoppable reign. With LVMH finally under his full control, Bernard Arnault stood at the helm of a new kind of kingdom. A kingdom built not on land, but on brands, heritage, craftsmanship, and cultural power. Most CEOs would have taken a moment to celebrate, to breathe, to enjoy victory. But Bernard Arnault was not like most CEOs. For him, controlling LVMH was not the finish line. It was the starting point. Now, he was ready to execute the true vision he had been building for over a decade. The creation of the most powerful luxury empire to ever exist. Part 7 marks the beginning of Arnault's expansion era, a period so aggressive, so strategic, and so brilliantly executed that business schools still study it today. This era was not about random acquisitions. Bernard was not buying brands for fun, fame, or the thrill of ownership. He was carefully constructing an ecosystem, a perfectly interconnected empire where each brand added strength, value, and stability to the rest. It was like assembling a luxury universe, where every planet orbiting around LVMH had its own identity, but contributed to the gravity of the whole system. Bernard began by identifying 3 types of brands he wanted to acquire. Keycap 1, heritage brands with legacy and craftsmanship. Keycap 2, aspirational brands with global potential. Keycap 3, emotion-driven brands with high profitability. He understood that luxury was not just about fashion. Luxury existed in perfumes, wine, jewelry, watches, cosmetics, leather goods, hospitality, art, and even media. So he expanded in every direction, not randomly, but systematically. One of his first major expansion steps was strengthening the fashion and leather goods group, the core of LVMH. He acquired or modernized brands like Celine, Loewe, Kenzo, and Givenchy. Each of these brands represented a different taste, a different class, a different customer. He didn't want LVMH to dominate one category. He wanted it to dominate all categories. His strategy was simple. If customers wanted luxury, they should find no reason to go anywhere other than LVMH. Next came the beauty and cosmetics sector. Bernard saw the future before others did. He realized that beauty products were not just luxury. They were global, scalable, and extremely profitable. That's why he transformed Sephora from a small French chain into a worldwide beauty empire. Under his leadership, Sephora became the Amazon of cosmetics, the Google of beauty shopping, the global playground for makeup lovers. Its success was so massive that it reshaped the entire beauty industry's retail model. But Arnault didn't stop at fashion and beauty. He entered the world of luxury jewelry and watches, understanding that these items carried deep emotional and cultural meaning. He acquired Tag Heuer, Hublot, Zenith, and later the crown jewel, Bulgari. Each acquisition was strategic. Each brand strengthened LVMH's dominance over timepieces and precious jewelry. Luxury wasn't just clothing, it was the way people expressed status, identity, and memory. And then came one of his most brilliant moves, strengthening LVMH's wine and spirits division. Brands like Moët and Chandon, Hennessy, Dom Perignon, Krug, Veuve Clicquot all became central pillars of the empire. These weren't just alcohol brands. They were global symbols of celebration, royalty, and victory. By controlling these, LVMH became part of nearly every high-class event, every wedding, every celebration, every luxury moment worldwide. But the true genius of the expansion era was not just what Arnault bought. It was how he revived everything he bought. When Bernard acquired a brand, he didn't just own it. He saved it, healed it, polished it, and pushed it to global dominance. He hired extraordinary creative directors, infused fresh artistic energy, corrected outdated business models, and upgraded marketing to world-class levels. He didn't treat brands as companies. He treated them as living beings. He respected their heritage, but gave them a new future. Under his leadership, Dior became stronger. Louis Vuitton became unstoppable. Fendi reclaimed global relevance. Sephora became a giant. Bulgari became more premium. Tag Heuer reinvented itself. This was not expansion, it was renaissance. A rebirth of luxury across continents. Through all this, Bernard Arnault remained calm, disciplined, and focused. He continued reading financial reports every night, visiting stores personally, analyzing customer psychology, and meeting designers to understand their vision. He wasn't just a CEO. He was the emperor, the conductor of a massive orchestra where every brand played a different symphony. By the end of this expansion wave, LVMH was no longer a company. It had become a global empire of dreams, a constellation of brands, a universe of luxury experiences. And Arnault was the architect behind it all. This period defined Bernard Arnault not just as a businessman, but as a legend. A man who could revive failing brands. A man who could predict cultural shifts. A man who turned luxury into a global, unstoppable economic force. In this part, we dive into one of the most crucial turning points of Bernard Arnault's life. The period where he transformed from a businessman into a visionary empire builder. This is the phase where his thinking matured, his risk-taking became strategic instead of impulsive, and his understanding of luxury deepened into an art form. And to fully explain this, we go back to the moment when Arnault realized that the luxury industry wasn't just about selling expensive products. It was about selling identity, symbolism, dreams, and status. This realization didn't come overnight. It came through years of calculated observation, slow mastery, and obsessively studying how emotions influence purchasing decisions. Bernard Arnault spent long hours reading business case studies, psychological reports, and market research about how people perceive luxury. He realized something powerful. Luxury isn't bought, it's felt. It is emotional, not logical. A person doesn't buy a Louis Vuitton bag because it holds more items. They buy it because it holds more meaning. They don't buy Dior perfume to smell good. They buy it to feel unforgettable. This shift in thinking became the backbone of his future empire. During this period, Arnault also sharpened one of his greatest weapons, his patience. Unlike many businessmen who rush expansion, Arnault believed in slow and steady domination. He moved in silence. Instead of making loud announcements, he quietly studied weak luxury houses, failing brands, and family-run companies that had emotional value but not managerial discipline. He learned to identify brands that were sleeping giants, companies that had heritage, history, emotional loyalty, but lacked modern leadership. Arnault knew that if he injected vision, structure, and quality control into them, they could explode in value. This became his signature strategy. Find undervalued luxury, revive it, reposition it, recreate its prestige, then turn it into global desire. During this turning point, Arnault also built one of his most important skills, talent recognition. He learned that luxury is created by artists, designers, craftsmen, and creative thinkers, not accountants. So he made creativity the center of his business. Arnault developed an intuitive ability to pick designers before the world noticed them. He understood that talent is the engine of luxury, so he empowered creators with full freedom. At the same time, he placed strict discipline over brand values, quality, and long-term image. This balance, creative freedom plus business discipline, became his secret formula. He also began building his influence silently in powerful networks. He started spending time with bankers, analysts, political leaders, and cultural icons. He wasn't networking to brag. He was networking to understand how the world works. He listened more than he spoke. And because he moved quietly, people underestimated him, which became his advantage. He understood the world of power, money, and influence without attracting unnecessary attention. This was also the period when Arnault learned the art of timing. He understood that success is not only about making good decisions. It's about making them at the exact right moment. Buying a company too early can drain capital. Buying too late can cost billions. Arnaud mastered timing like a chess grandmaster. He waited patiently for opportunities, and when the right moment came, he struck fast, with precision, leaving competitors shocked. Most importantly, this period brought clarity to his life mission: to build the greatest luxury empire in modern history. Not a brand, not a company, an empire, a constellation of legendary houses, each with its own identity, culture, and heritage, but united under one strategic vision. This is where Bernard Arnault transitioned from being a businessman into a luxury architect, a brand philosopher, a global trendsetter, and ultimately the richest man on earth. After the turning point of his mindset, Bernard Arnault stepped into the phase that would define his legacy forever: the rise and expansion of LVMH, a move that transformed the entire luxury industry. But this rise wasn't a simple corporate takeover. It was a battle of intelligence, patience, psychological mastery, and strategic vision. To understand how Arnault orchestrated this rise, we must slow down and look deeply at each layer of his thinking, because his strategies during this era were so advanced that business schools still study them. When Arnault first looked at LVMH, the conglomerate was far from the giant it is today. It was unstable, politically divided, and suffering from internal conflicts. The company had strong brands: Louis Vuitton, Moët and Chandon, Hennessy, but the management was chaotic, the vision unclear, and leadership inconsistent. Most investors avoided the company because it looked like a sinking ship. Too many captains, too many opinions, too many fights. But Arnault saw something no one else had the clarity to see. Luxury isn't destroyed by chaos. It's weakened by it. And weaknesses can be turned into opportunities. He recognized that LVMH was not failing because its products were bad. They were excellent. It was failing because leadership lacked discipline and direction. Arnault saw a sleeping goldmine buried under disorganization. Where others saw risk, he saw potential. Where others saw conflict, he saw an opening. And right here is where one of the most brilliant strategies of Arnault began: the silent takeover. He quietly bought shares. He studied internal politics like a strategist studying battlefield maps. He watched how executives disagreed, how egos clashed, how supervisors fought for control. He learned the weaknesses of every person in charge. And he waited. This phase wasn't about money. It was about emotional intelligence, strategic timing, and psychological calculation. Arnault understood that power is rarely taken forcefully. It is taken by outthinking others. He knew that to build a global empire, he needed full control, absolute authority, and the autonomy to execute long-term vision without interference. So he took advantage of the rivalries inside LVMH, letting internal conflicts weaken his opponents until they destroyed themselves. Then, at the perfect moment, when the chaos was at its peak, Arnault made his move. He gained majority control. He shifted the board's balance. He removed those who resisted change. And he installed disciplined, focused, and loyal teams who understood luxury and respected craftsmanship. This was the rebirth of LVMH. After gaining control, Arnault didn't rush expansion. He first cleaned the internal environment. He set a strict philosophy that every brand under LVMH must follow. Heritage must be respected. Craftsmanship must remain at the highest standard. Brand identity must never be diluted. Growth must be long-term, not short-term. Creativity must lead. Numbers must follow. Arnault understood that luxury cannot scale like a tech company or a supermarket. It must scale with elegance, discipline, and exclusivity. Too much expansion kills the magic. Too much accessibility kills the prestige. So he balanced growth with rarity, availability with mystery, desirability with exclusivity. During this rise, Arnault also proved one of his most important principles. If you want to build an empire, protect the soul of every brand. He visited workshops, talked to artisans, observed craftsmen, and listened to designers. He wasn't a distant billionaire. He was a present guardian of heritage. He wanted to understand how a handbag was stitched, how champagne was aged, how perfume was composed, how jewelry was crafted. This attention to detail became the foundation of LVMH's reputation for excellence. At the same time, Arnault built a culture of innovation. Luxury is rooted in tradition, but it cannot survive without evolution. So he encouraged modern marketing, international expansion, celebrity collaborations, digital transformation, and architectural excellence in brand stores. He made luxury both timeless and modern, a combination very few leaders ever achieve. This part of his journey also reveals his greatest long-term skill. He knows how to turn brands into legends. Under his leadership, Louis Vuitton became the world's most valuable luxury brand. Dior was revived into a global fashion powerhouse. Moët and Chandon and Hennessy became symbols of global celebration. Arnault didn't just sell products, he shaped culture. And behind everything, he remained the same silent architect, observing, adjusting, perfecting, and constantly pushing his empire to new heights. The rise of LVMH wasn't a business story. It was a psychological story, a story of timing, discipline, vision, and an almost artistic understanding of desire. Arnault didn't just build a company. He built a universe of luxury, a galaxy of heritage, a fortress of legacy, and a world where craftsmanship, creativity, and prestige come together under one empire, LVMH. This part marks the transformation of Arnault from a strategic thinker into a global titan, the man who didn't just enter the luxury world. He redesigned it. By the time Bernard Arnault entered the late 1990s and early 2000s, LVMH had become a stronghold of luxury, but Arnault's vision went far beyond stability. For him, being the largest was never enough. He wanted global domination, a complete ecosystem of luxury where every possible category, region, and emotion connected to LVMH's empire. He understood that luxury was not a local or regional business. It was global, cultural, and psychological. Every acquisition, every campaign, every product line, and every brand positioning was a calculated step toward making LVMH synonymous with ultimate prestige. Arnault's strategy in this era was multifaceted. First, he expanded geographically. LVMH had a strong European presence, but the world was changing. The rise of new markets, particularly in Asia, presented opportunities that competitors underestimated. Bernard understood that China, Japan, South Korea, and later the Middle East were fertile grounds for luxury expansion. But he didn't enter these markets blindly. He studied consumer behavior, cultural preferences, income distribution, and local sensitivities. He opened stores not merely to sell, but to create experiences that combined heritage, elegance, and exclusivity. Every flagship store in Tokyo, Shanghai, Seoul, or Dubai was meticulously designed to communicate a story, history, prestige, and sophistication, turning each visit into a memorable, almost spiritual experience. Second, he continued acquiring and consolidating brands with unmatched precision. LVMH added Fendi, Loewe, Tag Heuer, Bulgari, Sephora, and later Tiffany & Company, each chosen for their unique value proposition. Arnault wasn't buying companies randomly. He was constructing a luxury constellation. Every brand added something distinct. Watches, perfumes, fashion, jewelry, cosmetics, leather goods, and even hospitality. Together, these brands created an ecosystem where a consumer's lifestyle could be entirely encompassed within LVMH's reach. If a customer wanted to experience luxury, every need, every desire, and every aspiration could now be satisfied by one empire. This holistic strategy is what separated LVMH from competitors. It was not just a business, but a universe of influence. Third, Arnault refined the art of heritage preservation combined with modernization. Luxury brands can lose relevance if they fail to adapt, yet they lose prestige if they stray too far from their roots. Arnault mastered this delicate balance. He maintained the identity of each brand, celebrated their history, and respected their artisans, while also introducing modern marketing strategies, celebrity endorsements, digital expansion, and architectural innovation in retail stores. Dior remained Dior, but became relevant to millennials. Louis Vuitton remained Louis Vuitton, but evolved into a global lifestyle brand. Hennessy and Moët weren't just beverages. They became symbols of aspiration, sophistication, and celebration. Fourth, he expanded into new sectors that competitors ignored or underestimated. Hospitality, high-end experiences, and selective media investments were areas where Arnault could integrate luxury culture with lifestyle. He realized that luxury was not just bought, it was lived. Owning a Louis Vuitton bag was one step, but staying in an LVMH-branded experience hotel, attending a fashion show, or enjoying a Dom Perignon celebration elevated the emotional connection to brands. Arnault's genius lay in connecting products, experiences, and storytelling into one seamless narrative that increased brand loyalty and value. But beyond strategy, Arnault's leadership style became legendary. He combined intense attention to detail with trust and creativity. Designers, artisans, and managers knew that while creativity was encouraged, standards were non-negotiable. Arnault monitored key decisions, but rarely micromanaged creativity, allowing innovation to flourish while ensuring that every product, campaign, and store reflected LVMH's DNA of excellence. By the mid-2000s, LVMH's dominance was undeniable. Revenue and profits skyrocketed, brands were rejuvenated, global influence expanded, and Bernard Arnault's reputation as the luxury emperor was cemented. But Arnault was never satisfied. He continued scanning the horizon, analyzing markets, studying cultural trends, and planning his next move. For him, luxury was a living, evolving entity, and he was determined to be its eternal architect. Part 9 of Arnault's story is the era of consolidation, refinement, and global mastery. This is where he transitioned from strategic acquirer to a cultural powerhouse, where LVMH became not just a company, but a global symbol of aspiration, elegance, and perfection. By now, Bernard Arnault had achieved something few business leaders ever accomplish: a portfolio of legendary brands, each powerful in its own right. A global ecosystem of luxury, spanning continents and cultures. A reputation as a visionary, whose business acumen was matched only by his understanding of human desire. Through these years, the man who once quietly studied construction in his father's company had become the architect of modern luxury itself. As we arrive at the final part of Bernard Arnault's journey, it's clear that his story is not just about wealth, acquisitions, or fame. It is about vision, patience, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. By now, LVMH had become the largest, most powerful, and most respected luxury conglomerate in the world. But Arnault's influence extends far beyond the balance sheets. He redefined the very concept of luxury in the modern era, demonstrating that true success is a combination of heritage, creativity, culture, and strategy. Arnault's legacy begins with the art of acquisition. Unlike other businessmen who buy companies solely for financial gain, Bernard approached acquisitions as an art form. Each brand he acquired, whether Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, Bulgari, or Tiffany, was meticulously evaluated not just for profitability, but for heritage, emotional value, and cultural significance. He saw brands as living entities with their own identities, histories, and loyal followers. His genius lay in reviving these brands without erasing their soul. Under his leadership, each brand flourished individually while contributing to a larger ecosystem, creating synergy that amplified LVMH's influence worldwide. At the same time, Arnault demonstrated an extraordinary ability to understand human psychology and desire. He knew that luxury was not purchased, it was experienced, felt, and internalized. Every marketing campaign, every boutique, every product launch was carefully designed to create an emotional connection between the customer and the brand. He transformed retail stores into immersive experiences, perfumes into symbols of identity, and fashion into expressions of culture. Through this approach, Arnault not only increased profits, but also cemented LVMH as a cultural authority in luxury, influencing lifestyles, trends, and global tastes. Arnault also mastered the balance between innovation and tradition. While he embraced modern marketing, digital technology, and global expansion, he never allowed innovation to compromise craftsmanship, quality, or heritage. His leadership philosophy is clear: luxury must evolve without losing its soul. Whether it was collaborating with avant-garde designers, investing in digital commerce, or expanding into emerging markets like China, Arnault ensured that every decision reinforced the legacy of each brand while extending its relevance to new generations. One of the most defining aspects of Arnault's journey is his strategic patience. Unlike many entrepreneurs who chase quick profits, Bernard waits for the perfect moment to act. Whether acquiring a brand, entering a new market, or restructuring a company, he meticulously calculates risk, studies cultural trends, and waits for the optimal time to strike. This ability to combine patience with decisive action has been key to his unrivaled success. It's what allowed him to turn seemingly failing brands into global powerhouses and consolidate one of the most dominant business empires in history. Beyond business strategy, Bernard Arnault has cultivated a leadership philosophy rooted in trust, discipline, and excellence. He empowers creative teams while maintaining exacting standards, fostering innovation without sacrificing quality, and encouraging risk-taking while mitigating potential failure. This combination of discipline and freedom has allowed LVMH to consistently push the boundaries of luxury, setting standards that competitors struggle to match. Designers, artisans, and executives under Arnault's leadership are inspired not only by his vision, but by his relentless pursuit of perfection. Bernard Arnault's influence also extends into philanthropy, art, and culture. He has supported museums, contemporary art projects, and cultural initiatives. Recognizing that luxury is inseparable from creativity and artistic expression. By investing in art and cultural heritage, Arnault strengthens not just the prestige of LVMH, but also the cultural fabric that allows luxury to thrive. His understanding of culture as both a business asset and a social responsibility sets him apart from ordinary entrepreneurs. Perhaps the most important lesson from Arnault's life is the power of vision. He transformed LVMH from a struggling conglomerate into a global luxury empire, not by luck, inheritance, or trend following, but through relentless focus, strategic foresight, and a deep understanding of human desire. He showed that true leadership is about seeing beyond the present, imagining possibilities others cannot, and patiently building systems, teams, and brands that can sustain excellence over decades. Today, Bernard Arnault is recognized not just as one of the richest men in the world, but as a cultural architect, a visionary strategist, and a living legend in business and luxury. His story teaches us that success is not accidental. It is the product of vision, calculated risk, mastery of timing, respect for heritage, and the courage to build something larger than oneself. From his early days in his father's construction company to becoming the emperor of luxury, Arnault's journey exemplifies the profound impact of disciplined ambition, intelligence, and relentless pursuit of excellence. As we reflect on his life, it's clear that Bernard Arnault's legacy will endure far beyond financial metrics or corporate rankings. He has redefined luxury, elevated creativity, preserved heritage, and created a business model that will influence generations to come. His life is a masterclass in strategy, patience, and the art of building something timeless. Bernard Arnault's journey reminds us of a fundamental truth. Greatness is not inherited. It is built one visionary decision at a time. As we reach the conclusion of Bernard Arnault's extraordinary journey, it becomes clear that his story is not merely one of wealth or corporate power. It is the story of vision, patience, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. From his early days in his father's construction company, observing, learning, and strategizing, to the creation of a global luxury empire that spans continents and industries, Arnault's life exemplifies how meticulous planning, deep insight, and relentless focus can reshape the world. Arnault's legacy is anchored in his understanding that luxury is far more than a product. It is an experience, a story, a symbol of identity, and a reflection of culture. Every brand under LVMH, from Louis Vuitton and Dior to Bulgari, Fendi, and Tiffany, has been nurtured, restored, and elevated to represent not just fashion or craftsmanship, but aspiration itself. He has demonstrated that the true power of leadership lies not in controlling a company, but in shaping culture, influencing perception, and inspiring desire. What sets Bernard Arnault apart from other business leaders is his ability to see the invisible patterns behind markets, brands, and human behavior. Where others see chaos, he sees opportunity. Where others see risk, he sees potential. Where others see a struggling brand, he sees a future icon. This extraordinary foresight allowed him to acquire, revive, and elevate some of the most iconic names in fashion, beauty, jewelry, watches, and spirits, transforming LVMH into an interconnected ecosystem of unmatched global influence. Arnault's approach to leadership is a masterclass in balance. Discipline paired with creativity, tradition paired with innovation, patience paired with decisive action. He empowers designers, artisans, and executives to push boundaries, while maintaining exacting standards that preserve the essence and heritage of every brand. This philosophy ensures that innovation does not compromise quality and that growth does not dilute prestige. Every decision, every strategy, every investment is made with a long-term vision that transcends the immediate bottom line. The expansion of LVMH into global markets is a testament to Arnault's strategic genius. He recognized the rise of new economies, cultural shifts, and evolving consumer behavior long before others, ensuring that the empire was not only profitable, but culturally relevant across continents. From flagship stores in Tokyo and Shanghai to immersive brand experiences worldwide, Arnault created an environment where luxury is accessible yet aspirational, modern yet timeless, exclusive yet culturally resonant. Beyond business, Bernard Arnault has also made profound contributions to art, culture, and philanthropy. By supporting museums, cultural initiatives, and contemporary art projects, he has reinforced the inseparable connection between creativity and luxury, demonstrating that true influence extends beyond commerce into the broader cultural landscape. He has built not only an empire of brands, but also an empire of ideas, taste, and global aesthetic standards. Arnault's journey also offers profound life lessons. That greatness is not inherited but earned, that risk and patience must coexist, and that vision coupled with execution can reshape industries. He has shown that leadership is not measured merely by profits or market share, but by the ability to inspire, to innovate, and to leave a lasting impact on both culture and society. His disciplined focus, strategic patience, and ability to foresee long-term opportunities set him apart as one of history's greatest business minds. As we reflect on his life, Bernard Arnault's story is a vivid reminder that true success is multifaceted. It combines vision, strategy, cultural understanding, emotional intelligence, and the courage to take calculated risks. It requires meticulous planning and relentless execution. It demands respect for heritage, commitment to excellence, and an unwavering drive to create something timeless. Today, Bernard Arnault stands not only as one of the richest men in the world, but as the architect of modern luxury, a man whose influence shapes the way we perceive elegance, aspiration, and prestige. His empire, LVMH, is more than a conglomerate. It is a global standard of excellence, an enduring symbol of craftsmanship, and a testament to the power of visionary leadership. As we conclude this exploration of Bernard Arnault's life, we are reminded that his journey is far more than a biography. It is a blueprint for ambition, a lesson in strategy, and a testament to the transformative power of vision. From humble beginnings to global dominance, from observing his father's business to orchestrating the world's most influential luxury empire, Bernard Arnault's story inspires us to think bigger, act smarter, and pursue excellence relentlessly. In the end, Bernard Arnault's life teaches us that true legacy is not measured by wealth alone, but by the enduring impact one leaves on industries, cultures, and the human imagination. His journey is a celebration of intelligence, discipline, creativity, and the unwavering pursuit of greatness. An extraordinary testament to what is possible when vision meets action, patience meets opportunity, and ambition meets precision. Bernard Arnault's empire will endure. His influence will be felt for generations, and his story will remain one of the most remarkable examples of human achievement in modern history.